Hi, welcome to the Franchise Time Machine. We're just waiting on a raid from EVC and NYC2, so we'll just hold off until they come in to get things started. Welcome, Raiders. Thank you, EVC and NYC2. Thank you for the raid. And thank you for the fun, long
Why do you
stream
keep
today,
following me
EVC.
around?
Appreciate it. Tomato, thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. So I usually go on about an hour and a half later than this. Um, but like everyone else, I'm happy to pitch in. The raid did work. Thank you so much. I see yeah, I see the count going up. Thank you. Thank you, EVC. Get some rest. So this is about an hour and a half earlier than I usually go on. So some of this is gonna be kind of flying by the seat of our pants, but I had content ready for later tonight, so I think we're good to go. All right, good night, EVC. So I think there's three things I'll go over. I was able to add a third thing because we have some extra time now because I'm starting early. Um, so the first is, and it's going to take some explanation for those of you who've heard some of this. I apologize for the repetition, but I do weird things in the base game. Uh, for example, an entire team of Kitty Bransfields and Dave Steves for in honor of Laptop Hound. But occasionally I'll do something where I want to have a couple of teams go head to head to try to like demonstrate or see how something would work. And in doing that, I realized that weird things happen in the base game if you narrow down the universe to just two teams and you only have 52 players. When you do things in an entire MLB league season, which I usually do, usually I just add players to the Mets or I take over the Oakland Athletics and replace their roster with people that I want to do something interesting with. But if you don't have the entire league to balance out these players, this weird thing happens in the base game, the way the game's designed. And so I've been trying to work on developing a sandbox where I could do these experiments where those weird things won't happen. So when we jump into that section of tonight's stream, I'll explain kind of why that's happening or why we think that's happening and how we think we can correct for it. And also, if anyone still needs affiliate drops, you're getting them from me. So just let me know if you need to go any
Why do
longer.
you
But I'm going
keep
to
following
go
me
at least 2
around?
hours, so you should be fine. Um,
Why do you keep following me
Great Scott
around?
86, thank you for the follow. So, Yo Dodger Bob, thank you for the follow. I think I did those out of order. I think it's funny that Great Scott 86 followed me, and a lot of my clips are from Back to the Future. And Doc Brown says Great Scott a lot, so I just thought that was kind of funny. Um, the the other thing we'll work on is I was doing a test to see if the player creation engine in OOTP 25 had changed much at all from previous versions of OOTP. So we did a test where we generated 26 legend level players at 50% development level. And then we're in season 4 seeing kind of how they develop. So we'll do that season 4 simulation. And then the other thing I've been doing is here, let me show you the table for this. I've been tracking So people always talk about pack luck. Oh, P Boom. So Boom P Boom is working on a 62 Mets. Oh yeah, let me pause to the ad. All right, we're back. So uh, P Boom was mentioning in chat. His Caesar Tovar comment is related to a 1962 Mets um, save that he's doing. And it turns out it's one of at least two 1962 Mets saves that are going on in the community right now. So yeah, if you're doing saves like that, if you want to do a save but want to like tweak some players or like do what I do and put yourself into those saves, um, or just want to do something even weirder, that's the kind of stuff I do in the stream. So um, you can just kind of watch and see what happens, or you can take screenshots. I try to put together checklists of how I do things so that if something interests you, like you can try it too. So you kind of watch and figure out how you might want to do it. Um, feel free to ask questions. I'm all about like helping people, maximize their fun in the base game. And I use a little bit of I play Perfect Team as well. I got sucked into it in December of 24. Sorry, PT 24, December of 2023. So, um, Sean Soul, thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. Hey, and Sean Soul, you are follower number 200. Thank you very much. So every once in a while, I'll do some Perfect Team stuff in here too. But there are streamers who are. Whoa, look at that! I'm still new to all this Twitch stuff, so I did not think that thing was going to come up. Um, there are streamers who are much better at Perfect Team than I am, so I'll do it from time to time. But I try to focus on base game because I don't think there are as many people. There are several people doing saves in base game that they play on stream. Like Ezra Denny has a great 1959 Giants save going on right now. But I don't think there are as many. I don't think there are any people, maybe, or there aren't many, kind of testing the bounds of the base game by doing weird stuff in it. And so I see that as kind of like my niche. That's how I've always played Perfect Game. That's how I've always played OOTP. I think for over a decade now. And once I started playing Perfect Team and started following the Twitch streamers for the drops, I thought, oh, I should. My intent was just to do it. Um, my intent was to just do it on stream so I could export them to YouTube. So I just have the videos. Um, but then like people seemed interested in the weird stuff I was doing, which is I would have been doing it anyway. And so, I just do the stuff I would have done, the weird experiments I would have done, but I do them on stream now. So I hope you enjoy them. But speaking of Perfect Team, one of the things that's come up a lot since I've been playing Perfect Team, and I'm sure it has been going on since the beginning of Perfect Team, is people talk about pack luck. And anecdotally, we hear things in the community like uh, poor D Block, better known as uh, Don't Cut the D Block Dragon. Let me give him a shout out. If you're not following him, you should definitely follow him, especially if you're interested in lower level tournament play. And just in general, he does a fun stream on Perfect Team, but with the focus towards lower level stuff. Um, this poor guy he ripped 17 consecutive perfect cards that were live perfect cards. And given live cards in PT25 are only supposed to be 55% of the card pool, that's a that's an incredibly um, let me choose the words carefully here. It's a very improbable streak to occur. And and then we also heard from Badger W4, who mentioned opening 1,400 packs, which translates to 8,400 cards. Right, so thank you, Takmedo. A statistical improbability. That's a good way to put it. 17 live perfects in a row. And then Badger W4 told us about, 8,400 cards ripped, 3 perfects. The expected value is 8.4 because the what OOTP tells us is, you know, approximately 1 perfect card per 1,000 cards. Now, that's not as improbable. Yes, exactly. It's a less than 0.004% chance of that happening. Um, Now, only getting 3 perfects out of 8,400 cards, that's not nearly as improbable as 17 straight perfect cards. But the thing is, like, when you hear those types of stories, it does make you wonder, you know, what's the deal with pack luck? Like, are those ratios that we've been told, are they holding true? Is anyone in OOTP tracking those things? Right? Like, we can only look at it from outside in, and we can only hear anecdotes, or we can do what I'm doing, which is like, I'm actually going to start tracking my pack rips. Right, here's the first session we did. Um, individually, these sessions are meaningless. 1,002 cards in the big picture. D Block, I just gave you a shout out. I hope I typed your name in right. Um, but if I string enough of these together over the course of the cycle, maybe we get to like 100 of them, and then maybe we see some meaningful things. But more importantly, I want to start a conversation on, like, what is statistically significant bad or good pack luck. And I think we had a good conversation last night about oh, you won D Block's speed draft? That's awesome. Yeah, D Block, NASBase, EVC, a bunch of people I feel like chipped in today to help bridge all the drops so that no one missed out, and we kept the community rolling in drops today. Um, so yeah, like, I think it would just be interesting to document this stuff to see, and maybe encourage others too to bring some uh statistical rigor, or bring some receipts to these bad or good pack luck stories, because I think in this kind of game, and this is a good conversation we had last night on the stream, is they're going to get complaints about this all the time. And I think OOTP is. And I'm sure that happens a lot, because if you don't have statistical rigor, anytime you feel like you have bad luck, it feels like something's wrong. And so they probably get lots of complaints. But what I would like to do is help the community think about, like, and even maybe like assemble some data that says if there is or isn't something going on. And if there is, then let's ask OOTP to look into it. Now, I'm not saying there is. I just think it's interesting that, like EVC rips packs the other day, and just like stone cold, ice cold pack luck, like nothing. And then, like, later that week, you see Dishnet 34 on the Saturday Showdown just ripping diamond after diamond, and perfect card and combinator. And again, those are two very small sample sizes, but like anecdotally, it starts to feel like, oh, like there's pack luck again. And so that's one of the things I'm doing, and we'll do that last because I'm not sure how much interest there is. Yeah, T Block says the hype man must have a special button. um, but yeah, one of the other things I want to do also is like go back and look at some of the VODs and actually fill out a table like this for Dishnet's rips. And I wouldn't be surprised if the nights we think, oh my god, I can't believe his luck. Like if you look at it, it's like not statistically significantly above expectation or above expected value. So yeah, so that's the other thing I want to do today. So anyway, on this normalization thing, I apologize for the people who've had to hear this and like this analogy before, but and the background to this before. So this all started. Let me see if I can go back and find. All right, here we go. So here's the quick version. If you bring a if you bring a bunch of Babe Ruths into OTP to play against each other, they're not going to hit 50 home runs each. They're all going to end up hitting 20 home runs each, roughly. So the reason for that, and I can actually show you in the base game. So let me pull up the base game. So first of all, as long as I've been playing base game, that was a surprise to me. So I'm assuming it might be a surprise to some of you too, that that's how the game works. So I'm gonna pull up that Legends season 3 real quick just to show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so in the base game, a lot of the stuff I do in I mean, most of what I do is based on the rosters I bring in, but there are some fun things I do in the settings. But in the league settings, I think it's under stats and AI. Yeah. If you've never looked at this, it's worth checking out. What it does is it says, okay, what are the league totals in different statistical categories? Like at-bats, hits, doubles, home runs, etc. And then what is the modifier to kind of get to those league totals? So the reason that's important is because, yes, it does look very breakable, doesn't it? So I call it normalization. Lots of people call it the totals issue. And the totals issue is actually more accurate because that's what's actually happening mechanically in the game. I just refer to it as normalization because that's how my brain can absorb it easier. But essentially what happens is, you know how like in Perfect Team we talk about eras and this is a low home run era, this is a high home run era. Um, this is like a low stolen base era, this is a high stolen base era. Those modifiers are basically saying what's the expected total for home runs. If it's a low home run era, the expected total for home runs will be lower. If it's a high home run era, the expected total for homes will be higher. Or sorry, I might have said it backwards. But anyway, it's measured by it's managed by those totals. And so then, well, then now that makes sense and why your Babe Ruths are going to be nerfed if you bring in a whole league of Babe Ruths, because OTP is managing to a home run total for the league. And so if everyone's hitting home runs, it'll break that total. So instead, it's going to say, okay, if you're all hitting home runs, then you all have to hit fewer home runs each because I'm managing to a total. And so if you want your Babe Ruth to play like Babe Ruth, for every Babe Ruth you bring in, you have to bring in And this is where I don't know what the number is. Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it more? But for every Babe Ruth you bring in, you have to bring in someone else who doesn't hit home runs to kind of manage for that total. And so for the purpose of for this sandbox I'm developing, I just called it like for each Babe Ruth, you have to bring in a certain number of Mario Mendozas. So Mario Mendoza is famous for the Mendoza line, which is slang for like hitting 200 or not. Right. So for every Babe Ruth, if you bring in 1 or 2 or however many Mario Mendozas, then your Babe Ruths will still act like Babe Ruth. And I did an experiment to show that. And I'll try to zip through this quickly because I know some of you have heard this multiple times. After Sporer released the Nellie Fox card, right, he had, let me show you a screenshot. Okay, he had an avoid K of 173, which is super high. He shouldn't strike out much. In real life, he struck out 13 to 20 times a season. And I wanted a league of Nellie Foxes to face a league of Nate Cornejos. Nate Cornejo is a 40 iron pitcher. If you play cap tournaments, you almost certainly know him because he's a pretty popular 40 pitcher to keep your cap costs down. Right? He has a good card shape, relatively high home run suppression, relatively high control, but almost no stuff. His stuff is a 10. So if stuff is how much a pitcher is going to strike people out, and his is almost 0, and if avoid K is how infrequently a batter strikes out, and Nellie Fox's is the highest in the league, then if a bunch of Nellie Foxes face a bunch of Nate Cornejos, you should have a league with almost no strikeouts. Right? Hopefully that makes sense. But here's what happened when I did that. The Nellie Foxes ended up striking out 70 to 90 times a season. Right? Each one of these is an identical Nellie Fox who is given different defensive abilities so that we can have 2 Nellie Fox catchers, a bunch of Nellie Fox outfielders, and so on. Well, then who's striking out these Nellie Foxes if Nate Cornejo doesn't strike anyone out? Well, it turns out Nate Cornejo ended up striking out a bunch of batters, specifically the Nate Cornejos who were in the bullpen. So this is how I stumbled onto the totals issue. It was when I was talking about this on stream. Yeah, Duncan, see Duncan, right? It's crazy, right? That's the exact reaction I had when I found this out. Um, and so if you're a totals person, what you say is, well, the game is managed to a certain number of strikeouts, and it doesn't care if the only player is a player who never strikes out. Yes, yeah, Tuckmado. We can dig into that a little bit if you want to, because the other thing that this experiment highlighted is you've probably all heard about the bullpen boost. That if you move a starting pitcher into the bullpen, he gets a stuff boost. This 100% verifies that that's the case. The bullpen Nate Cornejos are like beyond Kerry Wood, beyond Randy Johnson. He is 24 and a half strikeouts per 9, insane strikeout ability. But like going back to why Nellie Fox is now striking out 70 to 90 times a season instead of 13. If you go back to this, right, if you go back to the totals view, it's the game is managing for a certain number of strikeouts. Now, presumably, it scales this up and down. So we only had 2 teams. So instead of looking for 26,310 strikeouts, it's looking for some scaled down number to reflect 2 teams. But it's still looking for those strikeouts. So when the only batter you have is this guy, the game then makes him strike out enough times to meet that total. And it doesn't care if this pitcher can't strike anyone out. It needs to make this pitcher throw enough strikeouts. to meet that total. Right. And I put in terms, so that's kind of what's happening here. And so, yeah, see, Duncan, that was initially my response too. I thought it was kind of lame because my thought was if I bring a bunch of Babe Ruths into the game, I'm doing it because I want them to act like Babe Ruth. I don't want them to act like league average home run hitters. But, when you think about how most people are playing the base game, they're not playing it like I am. They're not trying to bring a bunch of Babe Ruths together. They're trying to sim seasons and do things where, you don't want things to statistically go off the rails. You want them to stay within the guardrails of what happened in that season for real. And so from that perspective, I get it. So instead of kind of complaining about it or feeling sad about it, I thought, well, how can I fix this? This would work in Football Manager. I don't know enough about Football Manager to comment. um, so so what I thought was, okay, in this case, in cases like this, I want two teams to play against each other, and I'm going to bring in like a certain set of players to fill those two teams. If I want those players to act like themselves, then I need another set of players to um, help adjust for the totals, or in my way of thinking, to help break the normalization. So when I say normalization, the way I think about it is, if if Nellie Fox is the only batter in the league, that means every batter in the league has a 173 avoid strikeout. Right? Or here, let's look at this. And every pitcher has a stuff of 10. Well, if every batter has an avoid K of 173, then the league average is 173. And every hitter is a league average strikeout hitter. Exactly, Takmedo. I need a Javier Baez for every Nelly Fox. Or in my case, I started with um, Mario Mendoza, right? The namesake of the Mendoza line. And so that's what I did. I looked for a roster with enough bad players. Steve Jeltz is actually on the roster, T-Boom. let me see if I can find this for you. You guys are good at this. You're ahead of me. Okay, let me find the roster here. Now, actually, we ended up doing this 3 different times because the first time, a couple of the players were too good, which I realize might sound weird, but right, this is the version 3. This is the one that was finally played bad enough that it felt like it could be our roster. Right, so there's Steve Jeltz. There's Mario Mendoza. Takmedo, believe it or not, Javi Baez didn't make it because he's actually still too good. We're basically looking for things like batting average under 200, OPS under 500. Usually we have to go up to 600 to get it, but OPS under 600. Yeah, yeah, I can show you the whole list if you guys are interested. So it's the batters first, right? So, we've got Bob Uecker at catcher, Mark Sullivan from the 87 Red Sox. Um, and a lot of these are the worst season of a player, too. Takmedo says, it's similar to what I learned playing Stratomatic for the last 35 years. If you play a league of all-time players, all stats regress towards league average because everyone is so extreme versus your... Yeah, exactly. And I think, and we tend to see that in a perfect team, right? Your meta cards, if you just played them against live cards, of course they would hit like 100 home runs. But because of power creep too, especially later in the cycle. But because everyone else is also, you know, have power crept up, you end up still having basically like a league that looks like a league. And I think that's also why OOTP manages the totals, right? I don't think Peven finally got fired from his Mets sim. Um, I don't think um I think OOTP probably thinks most players don't want to have football score results in OOTP, whether it's perfect team or tournament play. And so in that case, I think the totals thing makes sense. And the way you can rationalize it in perfect team is, well, yes, you have a Ted Williams who's a great hitter, but then he's also facing all these great pitchers. So of course he's not going to hit 500 because he's also facing some of the best pitchers ever. Um, and so that's where I think the totals thing makes sense and the normalization makes sense. But to me, part of the point of playing base game, for me at least, is to do weird stuff like bringing in a whole team of Babe Ruths. And when I do that, I want them to behave like I expect them to and hit a bunch of home runs. And so, I think there's no way to expect OOTP to do that. So that's why I'm trying to build this sandbox where we have enough of these low rated players that will allow the Babe Ruth to behave like Babe Ruth. So that's why Steve Jeltz is in here. And for some of these are actually good players, right? Like Harold Reynolds is a good player, but I found one of his worst seasons, and it's one of the worst seasons for a second baseman I've ever seen. And so it's that version of him that ends up in the sandbox. And here I'll scroll down a bit so you can see some of the pictures too. Oops, sorry, might have gone off the screen there. Oh wait, you probably can't see all of it. Wait, how many can you see when I'm at the top of the screen here? Okay, you can see up to Tim Lawler. All right. So let me scroll. Now the players after that break, those are the players who we tried out and were too good. Like this Mike Pagliarulo is a good example. He was too good because even though his batting average and his OPS was low enough, he still had too much power. So it was still not low enough of a baseline. Togmedo, how do you add specific years of players? It is something I would like to do myself also. Okay, great question. So the reason I have this spreadsheet formatted this way is you want to take these three columns, the player ID, the year for that player you want to import, and then the destination team. Now, when I do these, I never know if I'm taking over the Athletics or the Mets or whoever. So I just make the destination franchise time machine, FTM, and then I change the destination team's letters to FTM. So I never have to change my file. And so the reason I put those three columns are so important is whenever you want to do this, hold on, bear with me. I haven't pulled up the file yet. So let me open up my notepad. Okay, here we go. Um, you want to dump it into a TXT file that looks like this. So when I copy those three columns into a text file, I have to delete some of the gaps and replace them with commas, but it's essentially OOTP is looking for a comma delimited list of player ID, comma, year, comma, destination. Now you don't need the destination, but if you leave that off, they're all going to go right into a free agent pool. Then you have to go find them, which is a hassle. Can you build an entire league like this? Yes, correct. So Takmedo, um, you can populate all the rosters like this, or you can populate the entire free agent pool like this. You can use it however you want to. My lists tend to be 26 rows long because I'm just building a roster. But you can do like 1,000 of like this and populate a whole league. Here, I can show you some other examples. Like, I find this stuff super fun, so I don't mind talking about it at all. And this is how I played the base game for years before I discovered Perfect Team. Also, this is interesting. Here's the Cornejos and Foxes. Um, Hold on a sec. Okay. Here's the Cornejos and Foxes. So it's actually easier to import a bunch of Nate Cornejos from 2003 than it is to bring one in and make copies of him in your season. And the reason is because the mechanics of copying players in the game is really clunky, and your copies don't end up on the same roster; they end up in the free agent pool. So you still have the same problem, like you have to go in and find them and bring them back onto your team. So it's much faster if you actually do it this way. All right, and then I have a bunch of Nelly Foxes under here too. I'll try to scroll up so you can see it. All right, so it's a bunch of Nate Cornejos and Nelly Foxes. Now, okay, I think we're back. Um, yeah, so you would talk about it, you would do the opposite of what this is, right? I have two players a bunch of times. You would have like 1,000 players, right? Each with a different year. The other thing you can do is, let me show you how I did. Um, so I have to get organized. I have these things all over the place in my, I think it might be here. I'm trying to show you how I did my, oh, here's the Kitties and Steves. Perfect. Um, Let me share this with you. Okay, this one's similar to the other one, except you'll notice every year is different. Right, so I wanted to bring 14 different Kitty Bransfields, but each one is from a different season. So I brought all of them together. And then I think what you're probably asking about is a bunch of different players, each with a different season, right? You can do that too. It's just however you put this together. Yeah, and where you can find the player ID in the game, but that's not ideal if you're putting a roster together because you may not know where in the game to look. So let me show you. Here, I was just, for some reason, I was looking at Walker Cooper earlier. Right, so when you look up a player in Baseball Reference, right, here's Walker Cooper. If you look up in the URL, wait a second, why is this weird? Hold on, let me. Okay, here we go. In the URL is their player ID. OOTP uses the same player ID as Baseball Reference. Takmado says, I think you just opened the door to thousands of hours of core game that I have ignored. I'm glad to be helpful, Takmado. Um, yeah, this is how I've played the game forever. Um, so there are a few different ways I would play the game. The first is I would take teams I really liked and I would try to improve them. But it's not really fun if you can just like bring every player you want to improve a team, because then you could just make them ridiculously good. So I created like a bunch of different scenarios that I would try to improve the team. And so I tried to codify those so I can share them. And I think part of the goal of putting this together was I thought at some point, if enough people were interested in my stream, I could open up to the community and people could take turns playing this game. Right. So you would pick your favorite team, maybe your favorite team that never won the World Series. And then we could spin the wheel, or you can just choose which of these do you want to do. And then I would do it in the base game for you, and we can all watch how it plays out. And we actually did this once. We did Force 4 trades with the 1997 Mariners. So it's my favorite Mariners team, more so than 2001, um, because of the players that it had. And so we took that team, and fortunately had a few people in chat. And one of the things we realized is the back end of the rotation and the bullpen were terrible on that team. So we used our forward trades to do that. So uh we forced the Braves to give us Greg Maddux. We forced yeah, exactly. Griffey, Buhner, Martinez. Um we forced I think it was Montreal at the time. We forced whoever was to give us Pedro Martinez. And we forced the Padres to give us Trevor Hoffman. And we forced the Pirates to give us Billy Wagner. So the back end of the rotation ended up almost becoming the front end of the rotation. The bullpen became like lockdown, shut down, and yeah, and we won the World Series. And so some right there's some Yankee guy on that team too. Yeah. Um, and so this is what I would do, and then another fun game I do in the base game, and this gets more into actually like breaking the game a little bit because it involves using editor. If you haven't used editor, I'll show you guys a little bit of how to use it tonight. Um, hold on, bear with me while I find this. A lot of this stuff is buried in the different things I've been doing here. Oh yeah, every once in a while too, I still do this save I have. It's my team NSFW, the not safe for work team of the dirtiest sounding baseball player names in MLB history. So if you want to check that out at some everyone like you can see. Oh, here, let me show you. Right, team. If you hear people in the chat, I think even EVC mentioned today my NSFW team. That's what this is. So you can see from the title slide, there's Charlie Furbush and Doug Fister are on the team, and we got folks like Dick Burns. Um, there's a Dick Pole, Elmer Sexauer, um, Jansen Junk. Anyway, there's a whole team of players like that that I do a save on, so you can come check that out sometimes. But oh, here it is. So I call it raise the roof, raise the floor. So I'll take a team and pick a number. Like in this case, I did 10 players. For each of those 10 players, I can boost one of their ratings by 100 points. That's 100 points in the old game. The old game went from 1 to 250 for ratings. The new game goes 1 to 550. So I end up adding 220 points to each player. And so I chose the 1990 Rangers. And this is where the points went. So I gave Bobby Witt basically a perfect changeup, a 550 changeup. I made Charlie Huff's knuckleball a perfect knuckleball, and so on. I gave Nolan Ryan I don't think he got to 550, but it was like a 500 plus circle change. And most of their hitters, I maxed out their power, except for Gary Pettis. His power was too low. So I maxed out his avoid K, so he became a much better leadoff hitter. So, yeah, so that's just something you can do in the base game. So those are the kinds of things I do in the base game. And when I do this, right, when I do this to the Rangers, there's no normalization or totals issue. Because although I'm making them like god level players, yeah, Nolan Ryan with a changeup that good is not fair. It should be illegal. Um, but in the context of an entire major league, it's not enough to disrupt the totals. So they still play like a Nolan Ryan with a filthy changeup, right? And so I think he had almost 500 strikeouts that simulation season. And all these guys who got power, like Pete Incaviglia, who I think of as like a barely 200 hitter, but with lots of power, when you increase their power, they hit more home runs. The home runs are not included in their contact stats. So if Pete Incaviglia hits 50 home runs, those those are 50 extra hits not included in his contact numbers. So he ended up having like triple crown numbers. He ended up hitting like 340 with 50 some home runs and like 140 RBIs. And that's why all these players end up getting power, because when we played around with it, we realized power is the best place to put the extra numbers if they already have decent power. The thing is, it doesn't work with like a Tony Gwynn because his power is too low. You can't get it high enough to kind of break the game. And so for like a Tony Gwynn, and we haven't tried this, maybe we should. I would think you'd probably want to put that number towards Babbitt. But again, when I do this, you don't need the normalization because the entire league acts as your normalization in that case. Uh, the same thing happened when I added when after Willie Mays passed away. I added 4 versions of Willie Mays, like 4 of his best seasons, to the Mets, the 2023 Mets. And they behave like you would expect Willie Mays to behave because the rest of the league acts as the buffer for normalization. Oh, here's another fun thing I did that you guys might appreciate. And I think Tankmado, this might be kind of like what you were thinking of. I brought an entire roster of my favorite players into the major leagues, and they won 153 and 156 games. So it was like peak Hank Aaron, peak Willie Mays, um, peak Tom Seaver, and they played as expected, and they played as expected because the rest of the everybody else acts as the benchmark or the counterbalance, right? That you don't have if it's just Cornejos and Foxes. So the rest of the league provides that buffer. And the intent of this team wasn't just to break the major leagues, but was to set up the next two sims. And so the first one was, what if I bring everyone as a 50-year-old, right? So if I go back to this notepad file, right, whatever previously their year was their peak season. Well, what if I change each player's year so it's the year they turn 50 years old? And part of why I did that was I wanted to understand how does the game treat players who have stopped playing or are way past their prime. And the answer was not very well. So this team of like the greatest players ever, or at least my favorite players ever, they won 2 games in 7 games. So I'll let that sink in for a second, because I know y'all are seeing, most of you are seeing this for the first time. Now, there's a thing in the base game when you play saves that if you don't know this term, you should become familiar with it. It's called recalculation, or recalc for short. What recalc means is when you enter a new season, all the players' attributes are recalculated based on their statistics for that next season. And so if you think about the Brady Anderson, Tom Vito says whoever lost those 2 games to this team had to retire after that. But if you think about the Brady Anderson 50 home run season, right? The game would recalc that season so that he would be capable of hitting 52 home runs. I think it was a 52? 52 home runs. But he didn't do it again. So then the next season after that, you would want the recalc to then step it back down, which is how the game works. And the reason we have a 7-game season is in simulation number 4, I turned recalc off because I realized what was happening was it was looking at their 50-year-old season and was doing a recalc. And when it went to go do a recalc, this player hadn't played. And so it was basically giving them the minimal ratings you can have because it was a player who essentially was not a major leaguer. So what happens when you turn recalc off is the game then basically like kind of predicts a trajectory up to the peak and down from the peak. And I think that's why Simulation 4 ended up with 7 wins, because their peaks were so high that with recalc off, it didn't say, oh, this player's 50 and hasn't played for 10 seasons, so therefore I'm going to give it minimal values. It's saying from this high peak, I'm gonna do a trajectory downwards from their age, based on their age. And then I'm asking it to say, okay, where are you when it's 50 years old? And it's grabbing that profile. And I think partly because the peaks were so high, there was enough residual ability in those players, even at 50, where the game gave them enough ability that they could win 7 games. So then the next thing we did was, and this was already part of the plan, what happens if I bring them in as 15-year-olds, so as high school players? And in the first sim, they won 12 games, which is, I think, kind of insulting towards older people that the game treats high school kids significantly better than it treats 50-year-olds. um, I think part of this is and also by then I had recalc off because I'd learned my lesson. So this time to calculate to 15-year-olds, what I think the game is doing is it's starting at the peak and and it's kind of projecting a trajectory downwards, right? Because if you're a 1-year-old, your rating should be 0s or 20s. And so then it's like projecting trajectory downwards and saying, okay, what is it at 15 years old? And that's what it's giving you. And I think, again, because the peaks are so high, this team was able to win 12 games. Then with the chat, we came up with a great idea, which was here. I'll show. There's something. Talk Beta. You want to talk about thousands of hours of gameplay ideas? So check this out. And you may already know about this, but there's also a place. Where is it? Sorry, some of these things I have to search around for because I use them, but I don't use them frequently enough. Oh, it's probably here. Yes. You see, there's batter aging speed and batter development speed, and pitcher aging speed and pitcher development speed. So, as far as I know, from what I've read in the forums and what I've experienced in the game, aging speed is how quickly or slowly you come down from the peak, right? So, as you age past the peak, how steep or flat is that decline? And, it doesn't treat every player the same, but in general, what's the multiplier? And for all of these, the baseline is 1. Development speed is how sharply or flatly do players develop up to their peak, right? So if you crank up development speed and you crank down aging speed, that means prospects would hit their peak very quickly, and then they would not decline for a long time. If you do the opposite, it'll take players forever to get to their peak, and then they would pretty soon after that hit an age cliff and would fall off the map. Like their skills would just diminish quickly. And so the idea was, let's take these 15-year-old players and crank up the development. So Tomatoes only ever used the base game to replay historical seasons to see what turned out different. This is all new to me and very exciting. Okay, good. I'm glad. Um, yeah, I tend to be like on the very extreme of doing these things, but I also started out replaying historical seasons too, because I think that's like a natural way to start and a fun way to start. Um, but then pretty quickly I was like, I had the itch to do more, and once I found out all the things you could do in the game, I was hooked. And so this development rating, you can see like I boosted in this season, I boosted it to 1.25, which is a pretty severe increase actually, the way it plays out in the game. But we cranked it up to, I think it was 9,999. And at that rate, it turns out that these players started reaching their peaks around mid-season. And so the team started out in a big hole. I think like 1 in 28 or something, 0 in 20 maybe even, and then 1 in 28. But then started to like really accelerate its performance and ended up winning 82 games. And there were 4 games out of a playoff spot when the season finished. And by then, they were all pretty much their peak versions of themselves. Um, you know, they started out as 15-year-olds, they're almost 16, but performance-wise, they're, all-time Hall of Fame great seasons. And I regret a little bit not putting, instead of 9,999, not putting like 12,000, because if we could have gotten them into the playoffs, I'm pretty sure they would have won the World Series, because by then, they're pretty much playing like this 153-9 team. Anyway, so that's another way to play the game where you can mess around with the editor and make stuff like this happen. Oh, that's right. This wasn't even editor. This was just messing around with the player ages and then their development rate. And again, on this one, I didn't need a sandbox. Now, here's when we would have needed a sandbox. If we wanted to play the 15-year-old team versus the 50-year-old team. because without a sandbox, I think what would have happened was everyone would have ended up playing like a 250 hitter hitting around 20 home runs. And so I think it would have, not been what we're hoping it to be. Minerva 9398. Thank you for the raid. Welcome to the stream. Hope you had a good stream tonight, Minerva. I think I know you stream other stuff besides OOTP, so I was curious to see if you're streaming OOTP tonight or something else. But here's what we're doing. I started way earlier than normal today to just kind of help maintain the continuity of the streams and the drops tonight. But we're revisiting this anti-normalizing, anti-total sandbox that I'm building to do weird experiments in. And then I created a roster of sponsor stream, very cool. Rise of Kingdoms and Call of Duty. Nice. Hope it went well. And if y'all aren't already following Minerva 9398, I think you should. He does a lot of perfect team stuff, in particular, with a focus on silver tournaments. And I have teams that play iron, bronze, and silver tournaments. And I learn a lot every time I watch Minerva talk about silver tournaments. So check him out. So the main thing with the normalization, this roster, let me pull that up again just to refresh your memory. Right, this roster of bad players to create the baseline against which the Babe Ruth can really stand out. It took 3 tries. So what we did was we played this roster in 2023, and actually I probably have the results in here somewhere. Let me see if I can find them. No, I don't. I do remember the numbers though. So the first iteration of this roster won 36 games. And I remember thinking like, okay, this is pretty good. It's worse than the 62 Mets, but it's still a little too high. And we identified a few players that here I can probably pull it up. Why don't we do this? Instead of yeah, I think we can do this and still do another iteration of the sandbox. Because this is important to explain what we're going to do with the sandbox tonight. Let's see, what did I call it? Was it experimental sandbox? Oh, here's test environment V1. Oh, all Mendoza tests 1, 2, and 3. No, Togmedo, not at all. If there was no interest, I would have just like dove right into the sandbox building, but then it would have made sense to anybody. So this is good. Okay, so I'll show you what it looks like when we put a team like this together and what their stats look like. All right, so here's if you look at the pitching staff, right? We had three 20-game losers. We had whips mostly above 1.3. ERA is not a great stat, but it does tell you something when everyone's ERA is above 4. Most of them are above 5. But then we had, and then here's what the batting stats look like. All right, not a single OPS above 655. And look at these strikeouts, right? Tons of strikeouts, and only 3 players in double-digit home runs. And they won 36 games. Now, 36 games is good. Oh, ads. All right, and we're back. So let me show you. So I think I wasn't sharing my screen at the time. So here's what the batting looked like. Right, no one with an OPS above 655. Only 3 players with double-digit home runs, and they only won 36 games. But if this is going to be a baseline against which you want your good players to stand out, I want it to be even worse. So we made a few changes. So the first thing is we noticed that with the help of chat, that Marvelous Marv Thornberry here, original Met, he had way too many home runs. 26 is way too many for this team. Now his OPS was only 655. That's because his batting average on base percentage was so bad. But still, I think we want to get rid of that. Then a couple things here. Billy Hamilton, in particular, way too fast, right? 16 triples and 34 stolen bases. Now, we like the 214 average. We like the 602 OPS. But, and here's why it's a problem, right? If you have too much speed in the baseline, if you bring in like a peak Ricky Henderson, he may not steal bases like a peak Ricky Henderson if the baseline has too much speed. And so what I was saying for the Babe Ruth analogy applies for a Ricky Henderson team too, right? If you bring a team of Ricky Henderson's in, you don't want them stealing, 20 bases because that's the average. No, you want him stealing like 130 bases. And so, wanted to knock down that speed a little bit. And then on the pitching staff, I think the starters were like sufficiently bad. But Bobby Ayala was a concern. And it was especially baffling that he was good because I think we took a 1998 version of him. It was terrible. But for some reason he pitched well, so we wanted to get rid of him too. So that was version 1. So we made those changes to get to version 2. And, we're taking away the power, we're taking away the speed, and we're taking away the one pitcher who had a decent OPS. So you would think, okay, what are we going to go from 36 to like 30, 25 wins? But the win total actually went up, which was very disappointing. And so here are the stats from that second season. Right, we've gotten rid of the power. Now, the pitching staff did what we were hoping, right? Like this Steve Trout. Now, don't get me wrong, Steve Trout had a couple of really good seasons, and one of them is the focus of a baseball reference card. But he had some bad seasons too. And this Steve Trout went 1-25, right? That's what we're looking for. A +2 whip. right? This Jose Lima gave up 51 home runs. Perfect, beautiful. That's what we're looking for. Um, a couple concerns still. Now Terry Mulholland is suddenly popping up and winning 9 games. Right, that's a bit of a concern. Uh, and this time we did have another closer with 22 saves, but his WHIP was still above 1.6, so we felt okay about that. And then on the batting side, here was the problem. We took away the leading home run hitter of 24. All of a sudden, we have 2 hitters now with over 26 home runs. So we had to solve for that. Now, backup catcher, there are tons of bad backup catchers. We just happened to choose one that could hit for power. So thinking back to like some of the teams I liked watching, right? I thought about the '86 Mets. I remember when the '86 Mets played Boston in the World Series, their backup catcher, Mark Sullivan, was pretty bad. And so I looked him up, and he was the right kind of bad: low average, low on base percentage, and low power. So we replaced Mike Zunino with um, Mark Sullivan. And then Jason Bay, we just had to find, it's tough to find corner outfielders and corner infielders without power. So, we looked around for a replacement for him. And on the pitching side, for some reason, this Doug Sisk, it's a 1985 Doug Sisk who was terrible. Pitching for the Mets in '85, just absolutely awful. He joins the team to replace Bobby Ayala, and for some reason comes in with a 2.59 ERA and a 1.26 WHIP. Now, that could have been random number generator, but it's over 60 games and 83 innings, so I didn't really trust that. So we went to find an even worse relief pitcher. So that got us to the third iteration in our current one, which we're using for the Sandbox right now, of this all Mendoza team. So this one, we replaced Doug Sis with Tim Lawler, who came in with a beautiful 7.62 ERA and a 1.88 WHIP. Perfect. Exactly what we're looking for. And, Jose Lima, his home run total is a bit down to 44, but we'll still take it. And Terry Mulholland even came down for that 9-win season, so we're pretty happy with this pitching staff now. And I'll cut to the punchline. This team won 17 games. So now we're talking. This is the kind of roster we're looking for. And then on the batting side, we did solve the power issue. Right now we're down to 2 double-digit home run hitters, and one's a first baseman and one's a right fielder. It's hard to find corner outfielders and corner infielders without power, so I'll take it. 19 is probably still below league average for first baseman, and 12 is almost certainly below average for corner outfielder. And their OPSs were 565 and 560, so that's fine. We'll take a little bit of power if we have to, especially in those positions. And then our stolen bases are down too. We only have 3 players with double-digit stolen bases. So this feels like the right team. Oh, and the outfielder I found to replace Jason Bay and Marvelous Marv Thornberry is Mets prospect bust Sean Abner. He had a terrible season that was perfect for what we're doing. And he's a right fielder. So to have a right fielder with no power was great, was a great find. And he came in with a 185 average and a 522 OPS. Just beautiful. Exactly what we're looking for this team. So now that we have the team, we wanted to run the Sandbox. And here's the way I did it. I was thinking of how to do this, and then I realized I could just take advantage of the AL-NL split. And when you set up a game, under game settings, under league structure, or no, it's under league rules. You can, oh wait, it's not options maybe. Yeah, in interleague play. Right. I realized if I turned off interleague play, all the scrubs could play against each other and only against each other. And they would leave our test teams alone, our 2 test teams. or two experimental teams. Now, we had to count on the fact that, okay, hopefully the the totals goes across the leagues, AL and NL, so that they're still present and they still solve the totals issue, but they don't interfere with our experiment. And that's exactly how it worked out. So we're very fortunate in that regard. Because otherwise I would have to build custom schedules that put them in the same sub league, right, AL or NL, but keep them from playing each other. But fortunately, the totals is across both sub leagues, but you can keep the sub leagues apart. So that worked out really well. But the question was, how many of these Mendoza teams do we need to balance two experimental teams? And I think the answer is going to vary depending on what kind of team you're bringing in. And so I think I'm going to have several of these sandboxes built. But our first experiment was six Mendoza teams for two, and we went back to the Cornejos and Foxes experiment because we kind of knew what that experiment should look like. And the good thing is, so there's a good and a bad to this. The good thing is the Cornejos and the Foxes behaved as expected. There were super low strikeout totals in that league. Let's make sure this is the right. Oh, this is the wrong one. Let me find the right league here. Oh, I think it's the one called Sandbox. Let me see if I can find it. You can see all my weird experiments as I go through this. Experimental Sandbox, here it is. Okay, so yeah, so we had two experimental rosters, right? Cornejos and Foxes in the NL. In the AL, we had 6 teams of these Mendoza All-Stars. So it worked pretty well. If you go to the Mets and you look at their stats, right, the Nelly Foxes struck out mostly single-digit times, right? So for the ones who played pretty much full seasons, right, 600 plate appearances, 4 strikeouts. 617 plate appearances, 6 strikeouts. 728 plate appearances, 7 strikeouts. This is even better than the actual Nelly Fox, and the reason is because it's only facing Nate Cornejos, so it's striking out even less. Each Nelly Fox is striking out even less than they did before. In fact, only one struck out as many as the actual Nelly Fox did in 1957, 13 times. So this is what I was hoping the first time I did Foxes versus Cornejos, right? The normalization kept it from happening, but now it's happening. Now, another thing that happened was because Nate Cornejo is not a good pitcher, the Nelly Foxes went off, right? Most of them had OPSs over 900. 5 of them hit 400. And again, this was, I guess it wasn't surprising, but I hadn't really thought it through. I was mostly focused on the strikeout totals, and they were way down like I was expecting. The flip side of that is because Nate Cornejo is not a very good pitcher, I was kind of had forgotten that Nelly Fox would probably go off, and he did. And then if you look at the Nate Cornejos, right, the strikeouts per 9, in real life there were 2.1, all below 1. Now that's because the 2.1 was against major league batters. These Nate Cornejos are only facing Nelly Foxes. but they're facing Nelly Foxes who are acting like Nelly Foxes because of the baseline teams we have. And so it worked beautifully, right? The 173 Avoid K was acting like a 173 Avoid K. And Nate Cornejo had even fewer strikeouts than he had in real life. His 2.1 strikeouts per nine went way down because he's facing a bunch of Nelly Foxes. But there was something wrong. And the first sign that there was something wrong was at the All-Star game. The All-Stars from the American League, which are from the All-Stars from these scrub teams, they beat our Nelly Fox All-Star team. And so there's something weird happening still. And part of what I want to do is like to go back and look at it. So if you look at the National League stats, right, it'll be all Nelly Foxes because that's all there is. But if you look at the American League stats, what is happening? Evan White, who is our, our Nate or all Mendoza or Mendoza All Stars first baseman, he's not a 52 home run guy. But I think what's happening is there's two things happening. Because I made too many. Hey, A-Dub, what's up? We're revisiting the Mendoza All Stars in the experimental Sandbox. This is the whole thing where if you want to bring in a bunch of Babe Ruths, you also have to bring in a bunch of Mario Mendozas. Otherwise, the Babe Ruths won't act like Babe Ruths. So I think there's two things happening here. And Tomato, I think that's part of it. But remember, there's only one Nelly. There's three Mario Mendozas for every one Nelly Fox. So I think what's really happening is Alpine Scott, 5 hour power outage, man. Sorry to hear that. I'm glad you're back though. I lost power the other day during the day for a few hours, but fortunately, the kids were in daycare. I was working from home, and as long as I didn't open the fridge or anything, we were good, and the power came back after just a few hours. But man, 5 hours, that's starting to stretch the limits of what's comfortable. Glad you got your power back. Um, so I think there were a couple things that were happening. The first is, as bad as Evan White is, if he's facing terrible pitchers, even he's going to hit home runs. And so I think the baseline became almost too strong, and the pitching was so bad that it helped inflate some of the players in the, I'm going to call them the scrub teams. But the other thing is, because there were no power hitters, and Nelly Fox isn't a power hitter either. So even Evan White having a little bit of power, again, if you think about the normalization, he becomes the bookend on the high side. And so if you're managing to totals, or if you think about it as normalization, whichever way you think about it, you need someone hitting home runs. And all the AI could find is Evan White, because Nelly Fox isn't going to do it. And so even within the baseline team, someone had to pop up and hit home runs. And it was Evan White, and to a lesser extent, Dan Kelly. And so since no one else is hitting home runs, Evan White ends up hitting 54 and 54 and 51 home runs. And so, the initial instinct to say, okay, Marv Thornberry with 24 home runs, that's too much, was correct. But we can't stamp out all the home runs. I mean, I guess we could keep trying, but I think this is an issue of because we made 6 of these teams versus 2 of the other, it really helped establish that high-end bookend. Now, I could be wrong. It still might happen if it's 2 versus 2. But the next thing I want to try is, instead of 6 scrub teams, let's go 2 scrub teams to balance 2 experimental teams. But I'm worried that this Evan White issue is highlighting another thing, which is It kind of reminds me of Jurassic Park, right? I think the premise was they populated the park with all male dinosaurs, so they wouldn't have offspring, but then they still had laid eggs, and I think the line was like nature finds a way. I think the AI or the RNG finds a way. It's got to find power to meet that total. And so if you don't give it anybody, it'll still find somebody. And so now I'm wondering if we don't, I think maybe we need a team with lowest of the low, but the highest of the high. And then the experimental rosters play in between the two bookends, right? So I created this team to be the low bookend, thinking the experimental team would be the high bookend. But if for something like power, if your experimental team doesn't provide that high bookend, then it's going to have to come from the scrub team. And that's what happened here. So I'm wondering if we need to have a scrub team and a great team, and then the experimental team plays in between. I don't know. That's a much more complicated experiment. Am I saying OOTP is equivalent to mating male dinosaurs? That would be for the OOTP only fans, I think. So I think it's a multi-part experiment. Step one is probably let's try this 2 versus 2. But I think we stumbled upon the perfect test case here. Because Nellie Fox doesn't hit home runs, it's helping highlight a weakness in the approach, which is for a trait like power, it's got to come from somewhere because it's managing to those totals. And if we don't give it home runs, it's going to find them. Now, if our experimental team had included some home run hitters, it probably would have been fine. And so, worst case scenario, I'm going to have several of these sandboxes for like low power experiments, high power experiments, but I don't want to do that. So I'm trying to find a way to make it work. And frankly, I'm okay if Evan White hits 54 home runs as long as our experimental results are kind of like what we're hoping them to be. A-Dub thinks we need more Mark Hendrickson in this. All right. This is my favorite thing when chat starts throwing names out there. So let's go. Let's go to BREF. And let's look up Mark Hendrickson. All right, let's see here. Let's find some bad whips here. 1.56, pretty good, meaning pretty bad. 1.548. 1.6 in a short season. I got excited this 1.909, but that's a super short season. So this is the funny thing about with A-Dub when people bring up some of their favorite bad players. I don't even know if Mark Henderson gets a tryout. Even his worst seasons, I'm not sure are in sniffing distance of our roster. I mean, our roster is pretty awful. Yeah, I don't think he's bad enough. I mean, here, I'll show you. Let's look at Bobby Ayala. We had to cut Bobby Ayala for being too good. Let me pull up it. What's happening to my BREF? Uh-oh. Have we, oh, here we go. Okay. Here's Bobby Ayala. Now keep in mind, he got cut after Simulation 1 for being too good. And we were going with his 1998 season. 1 and 10, 7.29 ERA, 1.673 whip, and he was too good. And I think part of why he was too good was his 8.1 strikeouts per nine. I think his stuff was too good. And when it translated into this experimental format, he ended up being the bullpen ace. Okay, let's check out Seth McClung. And this is where like that he was a good example, and Marv Thornberry were good examples of even if they're terrible, but they have one thing they're good at, it might be enough to make them too good. So Bobby Ayala's stuff was too good. Okay, now we're talking. We got a 1.825 whip here in 2006, a 5.9 walks per nine, and a 5.2 strikeouts. So I like the low strikeouts, high whip. Now we're talking. Yeah, this is a good profile for our team. And in fact, we have our roster pretty set, but I think it's safe to say we never know when we're going to need maybe a new pitcher or something. So I'm going to add him to our parking lot. So Adub, I want you to understand this is like the ultimate compliment I can pay you here is by adding Seth McClung to our roster, or at least to our parking lot. Now, was he a righty or a lefty? He was a throws righty. Right hand pitcher. Is it McClung? Yep. And we're taking a Tampa Bay season and his player ID from the URL. And we're taking that sweet, sweet 2006 season. Okay, so if we need another pitcher, he's the top of the list right now, Dub. So thank you for that. And let's go back to the base game real quick. Yeah, so again, it's one of those like nature abhors a vacuum and OOTP abhors a vacuum, right? It's simming to those totals. And so if there's not enough home runs being hit, it's got to find them and it's pulling them out from these players. Same thing with on base percentage, right? If not enough walks are being drawn, it's got to find them somewhere. So it's pulling them from, in this case, Bob Euchre. And hits like Tim Foley became almost a 300 hitter. And if you look at the Tim Foley season we pulled in, speaking of bad players, someone keeps insisting on using Ned Williamson in low diamond tournaments. It's funny how this is only my second perfect team season, but it sounds like every season there's always like that one card that early in the cycle just becomes like the bad card. It was last year was Ben Sheets. And it can't just be a bad card, right? It's got to be a bad high value card. The Ben Sheets I think was a perfect last year. Um so Tim Foley, what season did we pull for Tim Foley? Let me take a look here. We used the 1977 Tim Foley. So let me show you. Here's Tim Foley's career stats. Oh, I see what went wrong. I didn't go back to re-scrub after we kind of found out what was happening. If you look at this season, he had 228. I think what happened was I really got drawn to the sub 600 OPS, the 751 OPS, and we picked Tim Foley early on. Oh, let me pause for ads. All right, and we're back. Um, yeah, so this Tim Foley, by the time we were done with the rosters, our cap for batting average was pretty much 200. And so I think Tim Foley we chose early on, and his 228, I think, never would have made it by the time we were done, but he was already on the team. So if there is a next cut to be made, it's probably Tim Foley. And again, right, just like Evan White, the game engine looked for the tiniest bit of power because it needed power to reach those totals. It found Evan White. It needed to find, I'm sure, BABIP or contact, and so it found Tim Foley. Now we can replace him. It's still going to find him, because next up is going to be Dan Kelly or Don Kelly for both power and average. So in a way, it's a never-ending game. We can keep replacing them with worse players, and it's still going to find someone to elevate because that's the nature of it. I think the problem really is 6 of these teams was too many. And so I kind of want to see what happens if we go to 2 versus 2. I think that'll help. So anyway, that was a very long way of introducing you to the background to help you understand what we're doing and why we're taking 6 teams of scrubs and reducing them to 2 teams of scrubs. Um, I think if I had just jumped to that, it wouldn't have made sense to anybody but me. And so hopefully you weren't too bored by this walkthrough of our sandbox experiments. So here's what I want to do. I don't want to just remove teams from the sim. What I would like to do is restore the backup and then save it as a new season. I have to just remember how to restore a backup. So I want this one. And so I think I need to put it in a new folder, right? So I'm going to call this experimental version 2. This is 2 versus 2 instead of 6 versus 2. I think this is how I need to do it. Is that right? It doesn't look like it. Maybe I did that wrong. Restore backup. I want to restore this game. I must enter a folder name. Target folder, I assumed, is the new folder. Is anyone in chat? I have not done much restoring of backups. I just save them as backups, hoping I never need to use them, and I've never had to use them. Oh, sorry. Thanks, Ado. So yeah, I'm trying to restore the backup. This is the backup file. And previously I tried to create a target folder for it, right? I called it experimental sandbox version 2, 2 by 2 instead of 6 by 2, right? Which was the previous version. So I put that there and then hit restore from backup. And it says successfully restore the back. Oh, then, okay. Okay, so then do I have to go open that? I think maybe I have to go open that. Oh, yeah, here it is. Okay, so I think I just need to open this. Oh, looks like it might have worked. Yeah, okay, so now here's what we're going to do. We're going to, just like we have just two teams in the NL East, we're just going to use the AL East. And we're going to delete every other team except two teams in the AL East. So we'll delete the Central Division. And what could be more fun than just beating up on the Red Sox and Yankees all the time? So we'll remove the Rays. All right, now let's back this up. Okay, so we're going here. Okay, good. I almost backed it up over our original. That would have been bad. Okay, now let's try this sim and see what happens. Oh, yeah, we need a new schedule. That's right. So you just go to generate schedule here. Okay, schedule generated. Oh, I should do the backup now. Okay, so now this should work. Okay, I forget that 2023 starts with a couple games in March, so these are kind of meaningless because someone has to win everything. So I think let's just sim to the end of the season. I think. Like, theoretically, these teams should all end up at 500, right? Because they're clones of each other. Okay. Why did it interrupt the sim? I have all these. There's no reason for it to. Oh no, I have everything set to human control. Let me make sure. So one of the things you want to do in a case like this is set all teams to human control so that no AI is like doing anything weird with the rosters or anything. Well, let's see. I can just look at their transaction logs and see if they've done anything. Okay, no, they're behaving properly. I don't know why it interrupted the sim though. That should not have. There shouldn't be any interruptions. That's weird. It's not moving forward. Let's finish today. Let's try a month. Okay, there we go. There we go. All right. Some more meaningless achievements. A-Dub for removing the rays. Obligatory go docs. Now I have to remember though, A-Dub, I removed the rays from being an example of a terrible team. So I thought I was actually paying you a compliment by removing the rays. I left the Yankees and the Red Sox as the examples of terrible teams. Oh, this is cool. For a second there, they were both perfectly 500. All right, let's go. Now let's see if it'll take us to the end of the regular season. All right, we're almost. We should be. Yeah, there should be one more day left to sim. All right, now let's see what happened here. I think the best view is that league leaders view. Okay, now look at it. We have no one hitting 290 like Tim Foley did. Our home runs are nerfed. The highest total is 47. So this is good. Even in a league of scrubs, someone has to lead the league in average. Fortunately, our league leader hit 227. And that, remember, his average that year was 228. We just looked at it. So it's interesting how spot on that is. Now, the power, though, is going, it's still a little crazy. Like Bob Uecker hitting 32 home runs. That's insane. But I do like that the rates, like average on base percentage and so on, are low, like the way I would have hoped. So this is good. And how about the AL pitching? Okay, you have some ERAs, but I guess you have to, right? Because you're facing terrible offenses. So all right, so let's look at the Yankees and again, they're called the Yankees and Red Sox, but they have the same identical rosters, right? Okay, so the highest OPS was 842. So again, it's this power that's coming out. Again, none of these players should be hitting double-digit home runs, but this is purely Quentin McCracken is bad. He had a very bad season. Is I think the way to think about it. All these home runs are because Nelly Fox doesn't hit home runs. I think. Right. So let's look at the experiment is what we care about theoretically, right? So let's look at the Braves and the Mets because that's where the Cornejos and Foxes are. So Nelly Fox again. This is what we wanted: super low strikeouts, and even for Nelly Fox, 23 home runs is a lot. But because he's supposed to be the high bookend of offense, but he's not providing enough home runs, the AI is having to find it in the scrub league. And it's finding it. It's finding anyone with power above. So what it is anyone with power above Nelly Fox is going to hit 30 home runs. It's probably the way to think about it. And so, oh, here, we can even check it out. So what's Nelly Fox's? We go to editor. We look at his batting ratings. Right, his power is a 182. That's very low. League average is 413. So anyone above 182 on the scrub team is going to hit a bunch of home runs. And so let's go to one of the scrub teams. Let's go to the scrub Red Sox. If you threw Barry Bonds in this, now, not necessarily, Adub. If you threw Barry Bonds and you only had two scrub teams to balance him out, he might only hit 80. If you put enough scrub teams in, he might hit 300. Right? Because it's managing to totals. And so you need enough players to offset Barry Bonds hitting 100 home runs. But theoretically, you're on the right track. He would hit a ton of home runs. How many the game would let him hit is based on how many scrubby players there are that don't hit home runs, which is what I think what we're learning. So let's look at these lineups. So Don Kelly hit 42 home runs. His power is probably significantly more than 182. Yeah, his power is 316. And so he becomes basically the Barry Bonds in this league because he has the highest power. And the league is trying to get the league total of home runs high enough. And Nellie Fox can't do it, so the game is finding players who can. And so anyone with more power than Nellie Fox is going to hit 30, 40, 50 home runs. But I think what we did was by lowering the number of scrub teams, we lowered the amount of home runs that Evan White had to hit. So let's look at Evan White. He was our 54 home run hitter when it was 6 teams. His power was 400, which is even higher than Don Kelly's. What I think is weird though is all we did was change the number of teams. We didn't change Evan White or Don Kelly, but for some reason, Evan White has disappeared from the home run list. Right when he had 6 teams, there were several Evan Whites who hit over 50 home runs. All we did was change the number of teams, and Evan White is now not on this list anymore at all. Evan White was terrible. That's why he's on the team. um, this is really interesting. Why does he disappear from the league leaders just by reducing the number of teams? This is wonderful, though. The top 8 batting averages, the the top 4 hitter hit 195. It's not compensating for as many low home run teams. Oh yeah, I think you're right, Tomato. Because there are fewer teams in general, the AI has to find fewer home runs. So it doesn't need to tap Evan White. It's getting enough from Don Kelly, Abraham Nunez, and so on. I think you're right. I think that might be right. I think another way to look at it is because you don't have to find so many home runs, it was probably pulling Evan White because of that 400 power. When it doesn't need so many, it can then look at other things and say, okay, Evan White is so bad at other things. Instead, we're going to pull the home runs from Don Kelly, who's also good at X, Y, and Z. It is fun to see Euchre on the list, especially when you see his real life stats. Um, yeah, let's look up Euchre. I mean, I think most people know him more as an actor and a celebrity, but his stats were impressively bad. Oh, Tomato, we looked at Bill Bergen. The issue with Bill Bergen was he's too good of a fielder. And so, just like having someone who's too fast could nerf any future Ricky Henderson we bring in, if we have too good of a defensive catcher, it might nerf like a Pudge Rodriguez that we bring in. So we did look at, and I think it was Charles Warbot TBD who let us know that he was a real good defensive player. Yeah, underdog. I think that's right. I think the way you're saying it makes sense because Evan White is good at certain things. We can now, instead of just relying on just him for homers, we can spread those home runs for guys who have more characteristics that the AI is trying to fulfill, right? Fulfill totals of. Yeah, so I think let me see what version of him we took. So Euchre, we took the 1964 Euchre. So he hit 198 with a 550 OPS. But this was like perfect for us. And so his the only thing in hindsight, his on base percentage was 315, which isn't great, but on a 198 batting average, that's pretty decent walk rate. And I think that's why he's oh no, he disappeared from here. I don't know if you remember when we had the 6-team league, um Bob Uecker was dominating the on base percentage list. So yeah, I think having too many scrub teams definitely created a lot of problems. So I think this is a good experiment. It really shows by going down to 2 scrub teams, um, it's really helped straighten out some of these issues. Like several Tim Foley's hit 290 in the other sim. Right now, the highest batting average is 227. Several Bob Euchers had on base percentage in the mid 300s. Now there's only one player with an on base percentage over 300. And so I think it's some version of what Underdog is saying. Um, Underdog. If I liked only boobs, I may pick an ugly chick with great boobs. But if given the option, I'll take the one with boobs, butt, and credit. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And Evan White probably only had that high home run rate. Nothing else about him was appealing. And so when you don't need that anymore, you can then go to like the more well-rounded players, like your Don Kellys and so on. The good thing is, this is also showing me that it's not meaningless when we get rid of a Marv Thornberry or we get rid of a Billy Hamilton. Because when it's two teams to two teams, it says this is the late night content we were looking for. Um, this gives me some reassurance that if we do continue to evolve this team further downward, it's not meaningless. Like when it's two teams to two teams, it really does matter if you can weed out a high on base percentage player. I mean, relatively speaking, right? Like maybe the next move is to find a catcher who is as bad as Bob Uecker but without the walks, right? So it's not as meaningless as it felt when it was the 6 teams versus 2 teams. Okay, I'm calling this a success. I think we learned a lot by reducing the number of sandbox teams to 2 scrubs and 2 experimental teams. I think the next thing to try is let's try this 2-on-2 setup with like a different experiment, right? Instead of Cornejos and Foxes. And I have a long list of experiments we can try that with. So I'll try to pick out a good one for the next session. So then I think the next question is, let's go back to um, are you all interested in watching the next pack ripping session? So what I've been doing is ripping packs in sets of 167, which is about 1,002 cards, and tracking how many cards we get, high value cards we get. And I'm going to track this. I'd like to get like 100, 200 of these data sets and put them together and then say, yeah, like we're hitting expected value for perfect and gold, but diamonds are way low. Or we're hitting expected value on the types of cards, but there's way too many live cards versus historic. I mean, I don't know what we're going to find, but uh, apparently, I've asked other streamers. No one's put the data together like this before, and so we're only on session 2. Yeah, I'm trying to beat OOTP's math. Really, what I'm trying to do is show. Oh, there's another ad break. All right, time breaks over and I'm back. So my mother-in-law was in town until tonight, and our guest room is our office, and so I usually stream from that room. But while she was in town, I had to move down to the basement, and I haven't moved back up yet. So it's a bit of a haul to get to the bathroom each time. So let's see, what time is it? 11:06. Okay. If no one's going to find this too boring, I think I'd like to do another pack rip session to get some more data. Adub says rip. All right. Let me uh let me get a fresh table ready. Hold on a second. All right, this will be session number 3. And let me delete these out. One thing I realized too is on these combinators, I can't put them in the same format as these others because they're going to all be historic. And I think it matters what level it is. So I'm going to track those separately in a text box. And then I'll figure out how to deal with it mathematically later. Okay. And I'll fill out this table without bringing it up every time because otherwise it's going to take forever. And then every once in a while I'll break into oh wait, hold on a second. I need to figure out what this total is. What the count is that we're going to count down to. All right, so let me log into an account first and we'll figure out the pack totals. So Underdog, you can see your entire pack ripping history. Well, let me log in real quick and I'll show you. The problem is it's not organized in a way that's it's easy to pull a lot of information from it quickly. So here, we'll go to my previous main account. So I had a main account when I was just playing. And when I decided to start streaming, I bought a second license and I thought, I'll just stream, I'll just use these accounts when I stream. I didn't really know what I was getting into or how it was going to work. In hindsight, I didn't really need to do that, but um, I now have 6 accounts, which actually helps me do like interesting things in Perfect Team. Um, but I could have just as easily done them with 3 accounts, I think. So if you go to market and transaction history, um, well, here when we rip our first pack, I'll come back to this and I'll show you what you can see. But I don't think there's any way to get like an overview like you're talking about. Okay, so it says so this is interesting to I think it's interesting. This 829, it doesn't actually include um choice packs. So that's at 829, but out here it says 841. And so that means I have 12 choice packs, right? This total includes choice packs, but when you go here, this 829 does not include choice packs. So we're going to go from 829, we're going to rip 167. So we're going to 662 at the top of the page. And 563 for the total of showing off all my choice packs. If you knew how many tournament weeks they come from, you would not be impressed. Okay, so we're just going to keep opening standard packs until we get this total up here down to 662. But after the first one, um, I'll show Underdog what you see in the card shop. Oh, and we got a gold already. And it's alive. So that's pretty much what we saw the first two times we did this. Hold on, we're gonna enter in the data. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble with my table here. I should just do it in a spreadsheet at this point. Um, okay, so an Underdog, I know you're asking a slightly different question, but as far as I know, the only way to see what you've ripped is you go to your card shop or go to your transaction history and you'll see that you opened this pack. And I guess theoretically, you could just filter around packs and you would see all your packs. I think that's probably but you know, there's no count. You would have to manually count them up, which I think is a little silly. But again, like there may not have been much demand for that in the past either. I don't know how many people are like me and like interested in, you know, long run average of how often these things occur. So under did that address your question? I apologize if I answered a slightly different question. Oh, it does. Okay, good. And Adub, I bet you most of those choice packs were silvers. You can use that to estimate. Okay, yeah. And I think part of what I'm hoping is like maybe this will inspire other people to keep, you know, maybe better records of their pack openings, if especially if they feel like they're being if they feel like they do have bad pack luck. I mean, it could very well be, and I'm not saying there is, but it could very well be that, like, there's something wrong in the calibration or the execution, and maybe that 1 to 1,000 isn't playing out the way it's supposed to, or maybe the 55% live isn't happening the way it's supposed to. And, in the nature of a game like this, OOTP is probably flooded by complaints of people feeling like they're being, you know, they're getting the short end of the stick. But if we can present enough data, I'm not saying we would say, like, hey, look at my data, I'm getting screwed. But I think with enough data, we can say, hey, look at this data. Could you look into this and confirm that this is a small sample size issue, or is there something more systematic? And ADEP thinks a couple people track it in Discord. Oh, okay, cool. I haven't seen it for a while though, and don't believe it being streamed. Okay. But I think there's something visceral about seeing it streamed that makes it feel um, more real too, right? I mean, not that anyone's fudging their data, but it's hard to fudge your data when you're doing it in front of people. And frankly, the fact that D-Block is able to say, "Hey, I opened 17 straight perfect cards that were live," right? I think that you can easily, that's strong enough of a sample that you can say, "Hey, can you at least look into this? Like, can you check the long run average of perfect cards, and is it still meeting the 55% live standard that's been presented to the community?" I think it's just the challenge is, they're probably going to be very skeptical just because they probably get complaints all the time. And I think it's human nature when that happens. You're like, oh, great, another person complaining about their bad pack luck. But the downside of that is if there actually is a problem, it's going to go unnoticed for a long time. And again, I'm not saying there is a problem, but I just think the mechanics of a game like this are such that when there really is a problem, there are lots of mechanisms preventing that problem from being discovered. Like after that initial gold, we're on a pretty long streak here of no high value cards. Right. And then when you watch someone streaming this, you start to think like, wow, like this is bad pack luck. When really it's just, a subset of luck. And you happen to be seeing a statistically reasonable, stretch of nothing. A-Dub is hating the 6L tonight. In the quarterfinal and in 4 straight games, 7. I've played every game available so far. I had a tournament like that recently too, actually. Oh, the crazy thing is I had a tournament recently. I think I even won it. It was 4 straight 7 game series, and then I think I won by gentleman's sweep and a sweep, which you don't expect to happen that deep into a tournament. It was wacky. Don't even get me started on spotlights, A-Dub. Those are one reason I don't like them is like it's so hard um to check to see if they're being accurately portrayed because there's no like someone who like me who ends up getting a bunch of packs. Like I have over 3,500 packs to open. I alone can overcome some of that small sample size issue by just having the sheer number of packs to open. But you can't do that with spotlights. So I think it's hard. Like we're buying spotties on faith. Oh, Tonkmato. Um, go to all the player creation and importing happens in the free agent screen. So if you go to free agent and then there's an action button. Oh, here, I have a checklist I can show you. Go ahead and take a screenshot of this. Um, Here, screenshot this. This is what you need. So preparing the destination, that's clearing out the roster if you want to replace a roster. And it's changing the 3-letter abbreviation to the 3-letter abbreviation in your text file. Then you go to the free agent screen. The actions button is on the far right of the screen. And then select import historical players. The database you want is historical_database. And then there's a text box that'll pop up. Here, oh, I can just show you. What am I doing? Why don't I just show you? So go ahead and screenshot though. I think that'll be helpful to you. Okay, yeah. So let me exit out of the pack ripping for a second. Okay, so we'll just do it in the game we were just in. I'm not actually going to pull it in, but I'll show you how to get to it. The good thing is in OOTP 25, um, I say prepare the destination because in previous versions of the game, like you used to have a 25-man roster. Now it's 26. If you didn't have enough space for your players, it would go until it's full, and then the leftover players would either go into the free agent pool, or I think they went into the free agent pool. So now you don't have to worry about that so much. So you go to the free agent screen, right under actions over here. There's create fictional players, which I use a lot, and then import historical players. All right, you select historical_database ODB. Okay, now on this screen, the top of the screen is where you enter individual players if you want to just do one-off players, and then the year. The downside of that is you can't put in a destination. There's nowhere to put in your 3-letter abbreviation. So instead, I like to use this. Click here to select file, and then this is where you select the roster. Right, and then after you select it, there's a few things here that's important to track. iOS based current ratings on real stats. I always select potential ratings on peak seasons of career. Now these are important here. For the base fielding ratings, I like to use entire career. Now, it's up to you though. If you want to be pretty strict about the save you're doing, then you might want a base fielding percentage on the imported year. I like the roster flexibility though, mainly because I'm only importing 26 players at a time. So if people can't back up certain positions, then we're going to run into fatigue issues during the season. And the best example I can think of is Jackie Robinson. If you import rookie Jackie Robinson, he only played first base in 1947. Even though he goes on to become a great second baseman, unless you choose entire career here, you won't get a Jackie Robinson who can play second base. He can only play first base. It also ignores that he played shortstop in the Negro Leagues. And now the counter of that, though, is like if you want to import a Craig Biggio, if you're importing a catcher era Craig Biggio, you may not necessarily want him to have the second baseman ability that he has, in another part of his career. Or vice versa. If you're importing the second baseman Craig Biggio, you may not want him playing catcher anymore. And so, that's up to you. But I like that roster flexibility. So I use entire career here. And then pitcher stamina, I use imported season. Because if I'm importing a reliever John Smoltz, I want reliever John Smoltz only. I don't want starter and reliever John Smoltz. And then there's a few fields down here. If you're importing players with small sample sizes, um, unless you adjust these numbers, it will nerf them if they don't have enough at bats or innings pitched. So that's just something to be aware of. But yeah, you can just grab one from there. I hope that yeah, it sounds like you got it, Tomato. All right. Oh, A-Dub out of the 6L. Sorry to hear that. Man, if you were still in it, that's a long run. How deep did you go in the 6L tonight, A-Dub? Quarterfinals. Nice run. So when you import the players, so this is why I recommend if you're going to be replacing a roster, go ahead and delete the players first. Um, but this is a good improvement to OOTP 25. If you import them to the roster, it'll just add them to the current roster, even if you go over 26. And then you can remove players to get back down to 26. But I find it's always a pain to have to figure out, like, okay, who was original and who was added. So I always try to delete them first. All right, let's get back to the pack grouping. Yeah, if you don't mind, if it's not too much typing, I'm kind of curious to know what import you're setting up. I always find people's creative saves to be fun to hear about. Because we got plenty of time while I rip these packs. Also, y'all, another reason I wanted to do this is I have so many unopened packs. If I didn't do this on stream, I don't know they'd ever get done. Oh, you haven't decided yet, you just wanted to get started? Okay, yeah, so now I think you got the tools. Also, Tonkmato, not trying to pitch my stuff, but most of my VODs where I do an import, I walk through the entire process every time just in case someone's seeing it for the first time. And there are a few on YouTube. I export all my VODs to YouTube. Like if you look at the Father's Day one, where it's father-son teams, or if you look at my favorite major leaguers, every one of those has like a step-by-step import that you can watch. Oh, Historic Diamond, cool Papa Bell. I like that card too. I mean, I know he has no power eye, but I like the speed in center field um and the Babbitt. Okay, so it's a Historic Diamond. In fact, I realized I was still taking cool Papa Bell and drafts when there were clearly better cards in the game now, and so I think I finally like stopped doing that. Live Diamond, George Kirby, who I did not have. One of the ideas I wanted to do is take a team that didn't win, like say the 2001 Giants, keep the exact same roster, but import the player's best season instead of 2001 season. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a great idea. So in my game night, yeah, let me show you one of the options is, and I only show this to encourage you because I think that's a fun way to do it. Is peak performances. choose any 5 players on your roster and change each the stat year of your choice. So basically, like, you can take 5 players and turn them into the peak version of themselves. I think your idea to do a whole roster like that is a lot of fun. I think that's a great idea. Um, I did it once with um, I think it was the 91 Mets. And frankly, they didn't do too much better. It's a fun one to set up too, though, because you get to like look up each player and look for their figure out which peak season you want to pick. So you got a live gold. To me, it's that the research part that's a lot of fun. And then also, seeing how it pans out. But like I had a lot of fun looking up those players to see. Yeah, let me know how it goes because I haven't done that in several versions of OOTP. So it'd be great to hear how yours goes. Historic gold. I still grab this Larry Dirker in drafts all the time. Yeah, put this ultra wide monitor use with BREF. Exactly. Yeah, and feel free to you know, go back to the VOD and check out my spreadsheet. As long as you have those 3 columns next to each other in a row, it makes the export pretty easy. You want the player ID, the year, and the 3-letter abbreviation right next to each other. Um, that really simplifies things. All right, we've got a historic gold. We're doing a lot better on historics tonight. We're at a 50-50, which is much better than the other nights we've done this. It's been very heavily live. We've done it. There's nothing worse than being up at 12:30 and realize you have a couple perfect drafts to do. That's me every night, A-Dub. Every night after I finish streaming, it's like 1:30 in the morning, and then I have like my 5Ls and my 5Ls and bagels to do. And PT Live. You're in the right crowd for sympathy on that one, A-Dub. And especially with bagels and 5L, I just feel like I don't want to let down the community by giving someone a buy. They all get the draft and quick starts. Yeah, I do admit for some bagels, because I'm so tired by the time I start drafting bagels, I'll do the draft and at a bare minimum I import my strategy, but then like the pitching staff and the lineup are what the AI decides. I just don't have the energy to do it at that point. But I think it's still better than giving someone a buy and not for that player, but for the other players that have to play them to not just give them a historic gold. I gotta tell you, the last couple weeks since I've been streaming most nights, um, I've actually fallen asleep during my bagels draft. So if anyone's played me recently, you may have played a half full roster. It's because I fell asleep during the draft. There's another gold, live gold. I think we're actually on pace to hit expected value for gold today so far. And that's the thing. If I just went by how these long stretches without any high value cards felt, I would have been like, yeah, we didn't get jack today, but we've actually gotten a decent amount of golds. And there you go. You asked, you shall receive another live card, another live gold. You love live cards. You know what? I started playing Perfect Team in PT24 in December of 2023. So the regular season was already over. And so there's no PT Live. I never got to play PT Live until this year. And when there's no PT Live, if you think live cards feel worthless now, they feel like total garbage when there's no PT Live. Kid, it feels like it's been a while since we had a card to flip. Worthless. And there's a Tampa Bay Ray and a non-duplicate live card. That's unusual. All right, here's a gold card. Breaks up that streak a little bit. And it's historic. That Bob Miller, it's I wouldn't say it's a must grab, but if there's nothing else on the screen, I've taken that in drafts before. Is there another Bob Miller that's a starting pitcher too? Or maybe it's a different first name. AW plays a lot of live tourneys and drafts, so I actually do like them. Yeah, well, while I don't necessarily like getting live cards, AW, I've made most of my PTCS appearances based on live tournaments. Because I got sick of being beat by combinator teams. I just started like really going in on all the live tournaments. Okay, Bob Miller was just a pair of bronze and gold. The one that's a starter I use quite a bit. I guess that must be in 5L and 6L. And because I was playing so many live tournaments, I realized I was actually pretty good at live drafts. So I've been playing more of those too. In fact, I think I've won the silver live 2 out of the last 3 nights. I want to say. And here's a gold, live gold, non-duplicate. Live breakfast and dinner plans from your friends. Yeah, I've started to enjoy those too. I used to avoid them, but once I realized like I knew the cards so well from playing live tournaments, they became much more fun to play. And I think like since all the ratings were kind of, you know, there's no power creep, and so all the cards are kind of packed in really tightly in terms of like it's hard to find the edge. So like if you know a few cards that are actually better than the rest, it's a huge advantage. Another live gold. But yeah, all of that came out of just being so frustrated with getting beat by combinator teams. In fact, that's why I started playing base game again and started streaming because I had more time because I wasn't doing tournaments as much. Yeah, the meta stays same for a month. That's a great way to think about it, Adub. Yeah, so like every live update, I redo my rosters, and then over the course of the month, I like slightly tweak my lineups and my sliders and stuff. It's really nice to get to like know your cards for a month. And every once in a while, so every time I get knocked out of a tournament, I look at the winner and the runner up, and I look at their lineups and pitching staffs. And every once in a while, like I'll find a card that I had either missed or didn't have, or had been like underestimating, and I'll take a different look on it because they were on a winning team, and I'm like, oh yeah, this actually is a good card. And that happens a lot less frequently than in live tournaments because the cards are static. Oh, Hank Wise. I heard people talking about this card, but it's not really knocking my socks off here. Oh no, wait, for an iron, that's really good. I take that back. That's a great iron card. So AW is a combination of data and winner rosters early on to set for month or no. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It sounds like we have very similar approaches, AW. I'm actually surprised this late in the month. I'm actually winning silver live tournaments because I figured by now, if everyone's doing the same thing, all of our lineups and rosters are going to start to converge. But for some reason, I hit a hot streak in silver live. Hey, I got two Hank Wises. Man, this is a good iron card. No wonder people are talking about it. I bet a combinator that's selling for a ton. Yep, silver lives are fun, especially when you win them. So in the past, in PT24, if I had done that well in silver, I would have then taken the rest of the period to try to qualify in gold. But because of combinators, I don't have gold combinators because that account just plays silver right now. And in PT24, it would just take, maybe 20,000 perfect points and you can buy up enough gold cards that you're missing to then have a competitive gold team. But with combis, it just doesn't feel that's possible. So I don't even bother. I just like keep spamming the silvers. There's that Verlander card. This OOTP 25 card. So that way, it's kind of a bummer. Like I used to get a lot more variety in my tournament play, but the combis have kind of killed that. That's why you gotta play diamond. Ooh, is this a natural rainbow pack? We gotta screenshot this bad boy. Lucas Giolito. So that's a historic gold. Oh yeah, missing the silver. Live Rushman. All right, here's the moment of truth. I already got freed last night. Oh, yeah, at least he plays in PT Live. It's a non-dupe and it plays in PT Live, so I'm not too bummed out. So that was a historic gold. Um, Historic diamond and a live perfect. Oh no, it was a live diamond. Live diamond. Sorry. All right, so we're at 9 lives and 6 historics. Wait, there are open live tournaments? I did not know that. I mean, I guess it makes sense. I've never delved into the open tournament section. Quicks and daily live, but that feels quick. Feels quick. So Adub, what levels are you focusing on for PTCS each cycle? Okay, historic gold. So I know we've only been doing this 3 times so far, but this is by far our best historic versus live session. Oh, diamond. Another live diamond. You split them now. Diamond and draft daily on main. Silver on packs only. Gold and draft daily on theme team. Yeah, I've got. I need to be more strategic with my draft dailies. I think I like the way you're doing it, Adub. I do. I have 2 accounts focused on iron, 2 accounts focused on bronze, and 2 accounts focused on silver. There's a historic gold, and I have all of them playing daily drafts, and it's just too much. Like it takes up way too much of my time. I'm in a bit of a slow period during work right now, so it's doable, but at some point that's going to change and I'm going to have to focus maybe 1 or 2 accounts on draft dailies. You have one that does draft weekly, but you always forget to do those. You're that person that when everyone's like, why would this person sign up for a weekly and hold that space for so long and then not do their draft? And the answer is A Dub forgot. All right, we got 9 packs left. These baseball reference cards look so good. The one here's a diamond. The ones last cycle were cleaner, but they're both PT-24 and PT-20. The baseball references look so good. Another live diamond. There's a future legend card. In general, though, I think the card art's been really good this season. Yep, sign up 3 days in advance and forget. I should do them immediately. Actually, that's a good idea. I might start trying to do that. I think the challenge is like I have to clear the backlog first, and that's just never going to happen. But especially like 5L and 6L and bagels, maybe I should just do those earlier. All right, we're down to the last few packs. Oh, that's it. All right, so here's what we got. We're at the number. Um, no combis tonight. So under expected value for diamond, 5 versus 6.7. I think that's supposed to be 6 point. No, it is 6.7. Way under expected value for gold. We're at 13 golds versus 20. And we did get the expected value on perfect. Also, did everyone else? Yeah, that tends to happen. Also, our viewer count has dropped, and the bots don't usually leave. So I do think anyone who's awake is probably already gone. Welcome to my streaming life, AW. This is what happens. It's amazing. Like my streams will start, and it's not a huge crowd to begin with because it's so late. But there'll be like 4 or 5 people chatting and having a good time. And then before I know it, it's like I'm just having a conversation with one person the rest of the stream. So here's what I'm interested in because the trend that's been consistent is the lives have been overrepresented. So we have 11 versus 8. But tonight we're close to the 55%. The other 2 nights we did it have been way above 55%. So, Takvedo's still here building a spreadsheet. Oh, so you're building your roster as we speak. That's awesome. I'm super excited about that. Oh, hey, Takvedo, if I give you a insert John Travolta looking around you, if I give you a link to my Discord, um, would you mind sending or posting your roster? If you're not already in too many Discord servers, it'd be great if you would share that. Oh yeah, Tomato, would you have been mentioned in the draft they just had? Oh, Adub, I'll happily give you one. Okay, that's what I thought. I remember thinking that and be like, oh, cool, he's playing PBE now. All right, this is for everyone in the chat, even the bots. Feel free to join my Discord. The activity tends to go up and down, but for something like this, I'm sure it'll draw some interest. So yeah, thanks for signing up for that. And yeah, talk later when you get that roster populated, especially with the seasons. Please post it. I'd be curious to see it. And when you do the sim too, please post the results. I'll be curious to see like how how much better your peak season roster is because the few times I've done it, it wasn't a big help, and I think it's just because those Mets teams were so bad that even taking the peak seasons of every player was not a huge improvement. Um, and I thought it would be because the Mets were experts at finding players on their way down. And so I thought, like, yeah, if we could have gotten their peak seasons, it would make a big difference. But it never quite did. I think it takes like a certain kind of roster to really benefit from that, right? Like one with like a bunch of players who are either before or after their prime, um, and players that have a prime. I think a lot of the Mets rosters that I did, even their best season wasn't going to be worth writing home about. So every time I do this, I keep forgetting to look at the missions. Let's see if I can. There's a couple missions there. Oh yeah, there's a bunch of missions we can look at that. Wow, look at all those. Oh wait, sorry, I'm not sure. I'm like marveling at this and not showing you guys. There's a bunch of missions here that we just finished. So the first screen, I was like, oh good, we finished two missions. And then I scrolled down and saw a bunch more. All right. Is it gonna bore you guys to tears if I finish some missions here? So I never thought to do this until I was watching on stream, like not locking in some of your perfect and diamond cards, but imagine not filtering, but you can. You know what? I kind of like it that way because then, like, the ones that I just finished really jump out at me. So I've never looked at this, but like, I don't know. Unless I lock in this Henry Larkin, I'm never going to finish this mission. So I guess it's more of an issue with the live cards. Maybe you don't want to lock in a perfect that you think might go down in value, so you can quick sell it. I don't mind locking that guy in for a historical diamond pack. I think it's worth it. Higher level Japan collection, two historic golds and a standard pack. Well, that means locking in that Otani, but April hitters. Oh, those are just two standard packs. Okay. AW, I think I am going to have to filter. It's kind of hard to, like, when I get down, I'm like, wait, which line is this? All right, I'm going to have to filter. Oh, wait. Oh, wait. Okay. All right, you got me, A-Dub. You got me to do it. Throwback May. Oh, that's how you get the dust in May. Awesome. All right, am I locking in anyone I don't want to lock in? Nope. ASG. Oh, the Archer. Ooh, Modern Era packs. Wait, are these Modern Era perfect packs? What are these? Oh, they're gold packs. I see. You have to look at the corner. ASG Young 2. Ooh, diamond packs. Nice. Bush 2 standard packs. Stanton boosters. 2 golds and 2 standard. See, no, we're not locking anyone big. 2 historic diamonds. Yeah, there's some pretty generous missions in here. Oh, I thought of a sim I want to do. I was reminded by Tankmado working on his roster. It's you know how in perfect team like Dalton and Walkenfuss and Dink Mothel and I think even Connie Day. Does Connie Day have catcher? I think I want to try to do a whole roster where all 14 batters are secret catchers. I think it's probably possible. But then what I was wondering was like, who would the pitchers for that team be? Like, what's the pitcher equivalent of a secret catcher? All Seth McClungs. Way to bring it back full circle, A Dub. That's awesome. That's high level comedy to do a callback like that. That's nice. So many missions to train. Did you get all those one pack rip? I am sometimes lazy about completing missions, but I think these might have been from that pack rip because 1,002 cards is a lot. And I had over 800 packs in this count, so I had not ripped anything in a while. So, um, I think they're all from that. And part of it is I probably had a bunch of like almost completed missions. Yeah, AW, I was just actually thinking about Craig Biggio as I was saying that. I don't know if he's a secret catcher. I feel like the others, like there's some people probably think of Craig Biggio as a catcher first. But if I need a second baseman, I wouldn't hesitate to add him to the team. Can be all pitchers that also played in the NBA and are 6'9" from Mount Vernon, Washington. I do have a list, a running list of players who were good at other sports, like Dave Winfield and Danny Ainge, and I need to find that one because I think I think I could probably come close to finishing a roster with that. Also, the interesting trivia thing I learned was I think so. There have been several players that have been drafted by all three sports. right? Football, or NFL, MLB, and NBA. But I think I read, and it might have been one of those little blurbs or quotes that show up on OTP, or I might have learned it somewhere else. But I guess Dave Winfield is the only one who's been drafted by four leagues because he was drafted by the NBA and the ABA and the NFL and MLB. So apparently, of the people who've been drafted by all three sports, he's the only one drafted by four different leagues. I thought that was pretty cool. What is the secret catcher code for a pitcher? That now I can't stop thinking about that question. The old NBA drafts later rounds used to be Joseph. That is true. That is true. Here's the thing I always go back and forth on about OOTP is um, during the drafts, the player assessment is way too good. And by that, I mean, by the time you're 3 rounds in, every future major leaguer has been drafted. Bear says, did you ever take a look at that round from a 5L or 6L I posted in your Discord? Oh, the draft? Yeah, in fact, yeah, this is the one you were talking about, like your super good round, right? Did you ever say who you ended up picking? Yeah, I remember because Johnny Schmitz was on there too, and Johnny Schmitz is like a pitcher I always take in 5L. Oh, okay. Let me take another look. Oh, you took Johnny Schmitz. Good man. Good man. Yep, Adam Dunn, Buddy Bell. Yeah. I think it's extra painful when that happens after you've hit like a drought of 2 or 3 screens of no good picks. And you're like, where were all these cards before when I was picking crap? I do wonder, you know how like there are some of these players um who were just like really good at 5L and 6L? Um are they just better at making the best of their bad screens? Or are they just good at setting pitching staffs and rosters no matter how good or bad their cards were? Or because like when I win, it's usually because I had such a no-brainer draft that you look at the cards and you're like, okay, yeah, of course you were gonna win. But that happens so rarely. For the people that win multiple times, it's gotta be more than just luck. Yeah, AW, you win a lot, right? You win 5L, 6L a lot, right? Yeah, so whoever asked whether I'd just complete all those missions, I think I did complete them in the rips because if you look at these, the next ones to be completed, they're all missing just one or two cards. So any pack rips I do without dupes are probably going to knock out some of these. Yeah, I don't believe it's luck, A-dubs. But do you have a sense of like where the skill is coming in? Because we all have the same amount of luck in the trash, right? Whether we get good cards or not. Or I mean, I guess part of it is you don't boot a good draft. I mean, that's probably the starting point, right? It's like you don't waste a good draft. That's probably, no brainer number one. So the rest of us are probably missing out on a few chances of having good drafts because we just like miss some good cards. But assuming everyone has the same draft luck, like what are you doing or where are you creating separation from the rest of the pack? You take backups or relievers on bad rounds. Okay, yeah. I mean, I guess I do the former. Like I usually try to grab a catcher or wherever I'm missing a backup when I don't have an obvious like good pick to take. I'm probably not doing enough of the relievers. I'm probably treating my relievers too preciously. Hey, Dub, you don't stream, do you? I would watch you draft 5L and 6L. That would be a stream I would watch. All right. I don't think we're gonna have time to do. So here's what I kind of thought we could do tonight. We did revisit the anti-normalizing sandbox, and I think we landed on two teams as a good balance. Um, and hope the next one has a starter, but I target second base, third base, shortstop, and left field, center field, right field backup types. Okay. So that part I think I'm with you. I think I'm not doing the relievers enough. You do stream occasion on your main Twitch? Okay, I'm gonna follow you. Let me do that right now, actually. Oh wait, AW13 is that your main Twitch though? I just followed AW13. Or is AW your main? AW? Okay. Um, oh, I thought for sure you'd have both counts collecting drops, but maybe you already got all your drops for tonight. Let me can I follow AW even if let me see if I can find AW to follow. Do you do any 5L or 6L drafts when you stream? Oh, here's AW. Ooh, nice logo. You got all your packs on your three accounts like 12 hours ago. Well, hey, Tongvedo, that means I extra appreciate you being here because you don't need to be here, clearly. AW, I like your logo. Is that, did you make that yourself? Oh, AW13 is your mobile. AW is your desktop one. Oh, for some reason, it's not letting me follow AW. Yeah, that's kind of what happens, right? You think it's gonna be this big windfall, Tonkmato, but a lot of times, like you're already sitting on their best stats. Oh, you know what? My Twitch might be every once in a while. Twitch acts like I'm not logged in, Fortunately, it still saves my VODs and stuff, but the way I check it is I try to claim a pack, or I try to claim a drop, and then if it doesn't work, I know it's glitching. All right, let's see if it'll let me claim a pack. Yes, okay. It's mid glitch right now, so I'll have to follow AW when the glitch is over. It's weird, like it won't let me update the titles of my streams. It won't let me export VODs, but it'll let me stream and it'll record. Oh, AW. That's funny. All right, let me see. It still might not work because it's in the glitch mode. Oh no, that time it worked. It looks like awesome. All right, I look forward to seeing an AW stream sometime. Yeah, that's a sweet logo. I like it. So the oh yeah, so we did the anti-normalizing sandbox. I'm really happy with the when we went to two teams. It was great how like the Evan Whites and the Bob Euchers melted away. That was awesome to see. And then we did pack grip number 3. The only thing we didn't do is this Fictional Legends season 4. So we'll do that next time. Um, I'm gonna start looks to raid us too. Let's see if anyone's streaming OOTP. Maybe AW will stream his drafts tonight. Wait, AW earlier you said it was 12:30 and it was 11:30 my time. So it sounded like you're in Mountain Time. Is that right? For some reason, I think you're in Florida because you're a Rays fan. But I realized you could be a Rays fan from anywhere. You go to bed, yeah. I'm gonna raid us somewhere. I'll probably listen to wherever we raid to for a while. Okay, you are in Mountain Time. All right, so no one's streaming out of the park right now. Let's see. Let's see if anyone's streaming baseball in general. I like Cheeky's philosophy on this. And here in Central Time is still up at this hour. Yeah, Berry Basher up late again. Cheeky likes to raid people who only have a few viewers because they'll appreciate the raid more. There's a few people doing MLB The Show. You can only do this for another week, and then summer ends, and then you have things to do again. So does that mean, are you a teacher? I also can only do this until uh so I have co-founded a startup for doing healthcare devices, high school math teacher. And we're in between grants right now, so I have a lot of time on my hands. But ADAB could have streamed if your wife wouldn't kill you. My wife and I keep very different hours. That's how I am able to do it. So, Barry Basher, when school starts again, do you kind of go through OOTP withdrawal as you readjust to not being able to play all the time? Oh, what's this guy doing? EA's college football. Brett Phillips threw 94, 97 today. Bear says not really, as I don't sit on the game all the time in the summer either, but it's definitely different sleep schedule for you. I remember we did probably statistics in high school math when I was a student, and I was really good at it because I played Stratomatic baseball. So all those like probability things just came naturally to me by then. Even like when we were playing Stratomatic as kids, Hmm. One of my other friends and I, we like took the same approach of like breaking down the cards. And then some of our friends, they would just count the home runs on the card. But so the way Stratomatic works is you roll one die to see what column you're in, and then two dice to see like where you are in it. Boom, Boom says it came naturally because you're just a nerd. So if they're just counting home runs, they're doing it like without accounting for whether it's a two or a seven. Whereas my friend and I would be like, we would break down the actual probabilities. So in hindsight, like, yeah, like that was the split in our league. It was like the people who understood the probabilities and the others who were just like, oh, this has lots of home runs on it. This is a good card. It's not to math four or whatever it's called. Yeah, Barry Basher, what level high school math are you teaching? Like, are you the AP teacher or um I remember like geometry and trigonometry seemed to be its own separate like part of the math uh curriculum. Kind of wanted to rate into this guy, but he went to make some food. Algebra and geometry. Oh, I remember I was such a geek. I liked doing the proofs in geometry. They were like puzzles. See, that's like the North Carolina equivalent of Math 3. What do y'all want to see? There's definitely a couple of MLB The Show. There's a couple of NCAA football. Boom says, I'm so much a nerd, I get points taken off because I forgot to show my work because it's easier to do stuff in my head. All right, let's go into yeah, no problem, A-Dub. I hope you had fun. It was great having you all in the chat tonight too. A lively chat makes all the difference. No, no, Boom, I remember getting points taken off for not showing my work too. And I thought I was doing a good job of showing my work, but they want to see everything. You don't understand how to show it, but you'll always get the correct answer. Yeah. Oh, were you guys here last night when I raided into this guy who's walking across Japan? I kind of am tempted to raid into him again. So he's on day 105. Oh, you turned it off when I left. Didn't stay for the raid. Okay. I kind of like the idea of throwing this guy more viewers. So he's 30, I think. He's from Oklahoma, but he's lived in Japan for 8 years teaching English. And he's walking from the southern tip of Japan to the northern tip of Japan. And I think that's like 1,000 miles or so. And he's on day 105. It's a pretty interesting stream, but it's totally not sports related. I think if y'all don't mind, I'm going to raid into him again. It's such a weird project that I kind of like supporting it. You're trying to go to NC State for engineering and soccer? Good luck, man. Yeah, send him the bots. Yes, let's send him some bots. All right. But hey, I really appreciate y'all being here. It's so much more fun and interesting when there's a chat going on. And you guys seem really interested in the topics today, so it was super fun for me. All right, I'm going to raid us into Sensei Martian. He is the American guy living in Japan who's hiking all the way across Japan from the southern end to the northern end. He speaks English. His stream is in English, except for when he talks to people he meets on the way. You'll hear a little bit of Japanese, but he's a really interesting guy doing a really interesting thing. So, and thanks again. Thanks again for the new follows from Talkmado, Yo Dodger Bob, Great Scots 66, and Sean Soul. And of course, thanks to EVC and NYC2 for the raid. All right. Have a good night, everybody.